Welcome to the Merge Community Church podcast. We pray that the Lord would use this resource to speak to your heart and that it would bring you defiant hope and joy in whatever season you're in. We hope you enjoy and are encouraged by this message.
Yeah, so we're kicking off a new series this week. We've been talking to Abraham for the past few weeks. I hope that's been helpful for everybody. I wanted to recommend if you want to know more about Abraham's life, there's a book that I've read over the past couple months. I really enjoyed it. It's Soren Kierkegaard's Fear and Trembling. It's a heavy read, but if you guys are into heavy reads, any of you in there, I would recommend it because he does an incredible job kind of bringing to light the amazing faith of Abraham. But we're moving on from Abraham now into David. And David is another incredible individual. He is called a man after God's own heart. He is called, he's someone who loves the Lord. He's someone who had great faith, and he's also someone who made pretty terrible mistakes. He had it all, we might say. But he's specifically called a man after God's own heart. And I was thinking about David, and also I was thinking about our church over the past few weeks, and I just want to say thank you to people who are going to end up watching this, people who are serving in nursery and other places, people who are serving in any capacity in our church. I just want to express genuine gratitude to all of you. You make this thing happen, right? It would be very difficult for us to have church if we didn't have people in the sound booth and worship team and people in children's and nursery. You guys are incredible, and I know how much work that takes, and I want to say thank you. And specifically, I want to call out, there's a group that doesn't really almost ever get positive sort of feedback ever, is our sound people. You guys are phenomenal. I love you guys. Yeah, they're great people. Sound guys, yeah. At almost every church, the sound guy gets 0. You guys just clap for the sound guy. That never happens. And they're not looking for it, right? That's not why they do what they do. They're here with servant hearts. We've had meetings over the past few weeks. I know we've heard a couple people kind of bring up, hey, maybe the sound's a little too loud, or we've got some concerns about certain qualities of the sound. And their hearts are just so pure for you guys. I hope you know that. The people doing sound and running sound, they love you guys. They're echoing something that Ty's bringing to the worship team, which I love, which is two things from a culture standpoint that they're sort of implementing, which is when we come and worship, our first thing that we want, the first thing on our list, the first thing on the worship team, the sound team's list is we want to honor Jesus. We want to lift him up because he's worthy of our praise. We want to connect with his presence. That's the first thing. And the second thing that we're going to do is kind of eliminate distractions. We want to get anything out of the way that's getting in the way. And our sound people have been phenomenal in doing that for us. And so I'm so thankful for that. We've really, I think, done some cool things with the sound. I think it sounded really great today. Thanks, guys, for making the adjustments. You guys are awesome. And I just want to say this, too. Next week I'm going to talk, because David was a worshiper, actually, right? He was someone who wrote many of the Psalms. He was worshiping in the temple of God regularly. Well, not the temple at that, but he was worshiping where where the Ark of the Covenant was. He was a worshiper at heart. And one thing I just see this about David. And I see this in churches. I've got a weird amount of experience, and weird is the key word there, because I've been in a lot of different church environments over the past 20 years, leading different types of prayer and worship ministry type things in the Metro Detroit area, at different places. And I'll just tell you guys, worship and the type of worship and the sound of worship is so different everywhere you go. It is wildly different. Like you can be in like an old Baptist church singing hymns at like 60 decibels, like pretty low, right? And you hear everybody's terrible voices around you singing, and you're all belting out, "Be thou my vision," and the presence of God is there so strong. And then you can go to a concert venue, like, I don't know, think of a concert like Bethel or any of these places, and the decibels are well into the hundreds, right? It's like 110, and you're worshiping, and the presence of God is so strong. I just got to or you can be in a gospel church with somebody's just on an organ, and that's what you get is an organ, and some guy singing gospel, and the presence of God is so strong. strong there. Or you can have people, I'm just giving you the variety here, people doing literal war dances. They've got bow staffs and they're swinging them around and pounding them on the ground, worshiping with a bow staff, and the presence of God is strong. Or somebody miming out a worship. I'm just telling you, there's variety here, everybody, okay? The presence of God is strong, and he's worshiped in all of it, okay? So when we talk and we think about worship, it's not about anybody. It's not about any person. It's not about any quality, except that God is in the room, and we care so much about him being in the room, we're going to offer him more and more praise. So if we can just make our focus that, man, we're going to be way better off as people and as a church. I think it's so cool. But anyway, I got ahead of myself. I'm passionate about that. We're going to talk about that next week. But this week, we're going to talk about David and a certain individual called Goliath. I'm going to go back here. And Goliath, we'll cover that up. Goliath was a big dude. Right? I'll get this sorted out eventually. He was like this tall, right? Fee, fi, fo, fo. Well, that's Jack and the Beanstalk. That's not Goliath. He huffed and he puffed and he blew their faith down. No, that's, how many stories can I loop into this? But no, Goliath was big. I'm going to start out, we're not even going to read the story, because I think you know the story. You know the story of David and Goliath. And what is the first main thing you know about Goliath? He's a giant. Goliath is always bigger than you. The giants are always bigger than you. That doesn't change. You know, if you think Scripture was written just to tell a story that has no impact on your life, you might be missing it. God's telling a story here, and he's saying there's a giant who's intimidating, and he's making everyone afraid, and he's stopping the destinies of God through fear and intimidation. And that giant is bigger than you. That's normal. If you're encountering giants in your life that are tall and sweeping, who've got gigantic weapons that could take you out in a minute, that's normal. We should not expect the Christian faith to encounter giants that are this big. That's not a giant. We should be encountering giants that are that big, right? That's our faith. This is the Christian walk. This is normal. A Christian walk is not an easy walk. It's not one where the problems lay down. And they go, oh, watch out, this guy's a Christian, let's get out of his way. What, spiritual forces in heavenly places going, well, we can't, we're just going to back away. It's not the way it works. What's your giant? What's the giant in your life right now? Oh, you've all got different giants, and the giant might be different in different seasons. You might have to conquer more. David, it's well known that David killed Goliath, right? I'll spoil the story here. Well known that he did that. But did you know that after he killed Goliath, there were more giants in the land that he had to take out? It wasn't just Goliath. There were more. You're going to encounter giant after giant after giant in the Christian life. I'll tell you, I like to, as much as I can, be open and honest about where I'm at in life. The giant that I'm facing right now, it's a little different than one I didn't even know it was there, but it was. Kind of explained this a little bit last week. I've been facing a lot of pressure at work, and pretty busy outside of that too. Here we're really, I think, trying to build something cool here that God's in our church, and so working and passionately so, and having fun doing it. But it's still, energy is involved, and so I've been very busy and very tired, I would say, hitting walls of tiredness. And what I realize, and this is cool, it's a God thing. I think it's a God thing, is that tiredness, in my life, I'll just explain this. In my life, when I get tired, I place a cap on myself and I say, I can only go to this level. I'm tired. I place an expectation, even in my heart, that says, I'm tired, and if I try to do too much being tired, I'm just going to make a lot of mistakes. I'm going to make there's going to be problems. I'm going to do things that are stupid. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to mess up. And maybe in human terms, that's maybe true. But what God was showing me was Paul. I was reading this. This isn't in the slides, but I was reading it. 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. We place artificial caps on ourselves. We look at ourselves as though we're mere humans with no relation to an all-powerful God. We face giants, and whatever that giant is might be different for you. For me, I was realizing a giant in my life was that I bow to fatigue. I go, okay, I'm tired, I can't do anything. Oh, no, that's not true. What Paul is saying is, when I'm weak, that's the time God's going to do the most work. When I'm out of energy, how many moms and dads with babies can understand when I'm all out of gas? Well, that's the time when God wants to work in your life. See, but I wasn't thinking that way. See, I was thinking when I'm tired, that's when I'm weak. And Paul's saying, no, when you're tired, that's when you're strong, because God can work through that. That's a perspective shift, right? We don't necessarily think that way. I think I got to get a full night of sleep. I got to eat all the right food. I got to be feeling really, really good, and that's when I'm at my best. In the Christian life, that might actually be when you're at your worst, because you might be depending so much on yourself. It's all about where our dependence gets shifted to, and when we're in the middle of pressure and stress, and there's things going on that are hard, that's when we lean into him all the more. And that's where we find supernatural resurrection type strength. And this is why, when we're talking about being disciplined and having this culture of discipline, and then also, being defiantly hopeful, well, it takes sort of a defiant hope, doesn't it? To be in that place of weakness and pressure and come out the other end and say, no, this is a good place. To say the weakness, that's a good place. See, when Goliath came on the scene here, there weren't enough people saying this is a good thing. Saul, the king of the day, he actually was like, hey, I'll give a reward to anybody who kills this guy. And it's going to be a good reward. You're going to get to have my daughter's hand in marriage. You're going to get to have riches. This is a good reward. But everybody stood and looked at the giant in the face, and they forgot about the reward, and they said, I can't take that guy. There's a reward for you, people of God, if you're willing to have a hope that defies the giant in your life. There's a reward for you, people of God. God wants to give it to you. He's offering it to you. We were singing up here about not letting fear stop us. Even in our praise, not letting fear stop us. There's a reward for not letting fear stop you. When you push through that fear, there's a reward coming your way. God's good. So Goliath's always bigger than you. But guess what? Somebody's got to win a battle. Somebody's got to do it. Well, I get that it's unusual. Listen, the only experience I have right now is my own. I get that it's unusual for people who are feeling pressured and stressed and tired to say, oh, this is when God's going to do his best work. I get that that's unusual. And maybe in your life you've got a giant, I don't know what it is. It could be depression or stress or anxiety or substance abuse or whatever. Could be relationally. For some reason you've been hurt in the past and you're carrying that hurt for years and years and years, and it's a giant that you just can't overcome. Maybe it's in your family. There are giants in your family who are holding back the goodness of God. And it's never people, it's always spiritual forces behind the scenes. But maybe there's something like that going on. It's a giant in the land. Where's your Goliath? Maybe it's a temper. Maybe it's over-emotionality to the point of harming people. Maybe, I don't know what it is, guys. Could be anything. But somebody's got to win a battle. If all we do in church is come here and support each other emotionally, that's fine and good. But if nobody wins a battle, how are we any different than going to a bar, hanging out with our friends? What's the difference? If no one ever wins anything, we never conquer anything, and we just live supporting each other, what have we done? I mean, it's cool. We've formed relational bonds. That's good. But is that really the Christian life? Is that really what we're here to do? I would say no. I'd say there's much more than that. And so let our relationships be places where we form bonds and support each other and feel for each other so that we might climb out of the pit. so that we might look Goliath in the eyes. Maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow. After you get that support, maybe tomorrow I'm going to look Goliath in the eyes, and that day I'm going to face him and say, no, you're defying the living God. It's not even just me. You're defying God in my life. Maybe we'll take that stance, because somebody's got to win it. The thing you often see with parents is they hand things down to their kids. They pass down generational stuff. The way that parents handle stress is oftentimes the way kids handle stress. The way parents were abusive of substance is the way kids sometimes grow up and end up being the exact same way. Why is that? Well, because nobody stopped the giant. He's still there defying the living God in your family. Somebody's got to win a battle. Who's it going to be? Somebody's got to stand up to him and say, no, you're not going to win this fight today. You met somebody who's after the heart of God. That's where David's at. And like I said, I'm not going to read the full story because you know it, but I might reread a couple passages that you may have forgotten or not known. It's okay to have a little edge. I read this in the story, and I was like, oh, I like this. This is, I can see it with David. David had a little edge. Sometimes in church, it's a funny thing. Over the years, we've encouraged good qualities, kindness, humility, gentleness, qualities that Jesus had. And you see it in Jesus' life. Compassion, mercy, love. You see all these things. But we're really not reading the Gospels if we don't see a fired up Jesus who was passionate about some things, who was willing to have a little edge to him. Not in an unloving way. Oh, love was all part of it. But he was not taking people's, you know what? He wasn't taking it. Pharisees would come to him with some of their stuff, trying to corner him. He wasn't taking that. read about it, right? Jesus was not taking that. He was like, no, that's not what we're doing. Paul wasn't taking that. If you read the New Testament, where he writes some pretty strong stuff to some of the churches. John, in Revelation, has a revelation, a vision from God, where he comes out at these churches and he's like, hey guys, get it together, or your lampstand's being removed. It's not just like, it is like love and compassion, all these things, but if we have the wrong mentality about what that always means, we might get a shift here that says, you can be passive. Passivity in the face of a real threat is not safety. Passivity in the face of a Goliath is not safety. It might feel like you're being safe because you're not challenging anything, but that's not safety. What that is bondage and slavery. That's not safety. We often look at, and this is why I'm like, man, if you've got a little bit of an edge to your personality, I don't know, you know who you are if you do. I'm going to try to not look at anybody. Eyes up in the air. If you've got an edge to your personality. I can get down with that. You're welcome here. It's all right. No, it's a good thing. We need people with a little edge because there's going to be stuff we got to deal with that requires a little bit of an edge. I'm not talking being disrespectful or, you know what I mean, but you get what I mean. And I've seen this in a lot of men. It's so funny. I think right now in our culture, it's like it's more okay for women to have a little bit of an edge. But if men have an edge, it's like, ooh, easy now. As long as I just want to say this over men though. We need you to be a warrior. We need you to be a warrior, somebody who's willing to fight for your family and for your kids and for your community. We need warriors in the faith. We don't need, oh Lord, you don't need to be somebody who feels like you have no purpose, who just sits back and does literally nothing and has no impact on anything. It's a big thing, guys. It's a big thing. Because I think what's happened is, as we've said, there's been a lot of narcissists and psychopaths who have made having a little bit of an edge, like we're going to find in David, seem really wrong. Because those people do have an edge, and that's not the kind of edge you want. And they've done really terrible things specifically to weaker people, okay? And that's where that comes from, that pushback on that of like, ooh, that male toxicity, you've heard that term? That's where it's coming from. It's not coming from strong, loving men who care for their families so passionately that they're not willing to let harm come into their life. And there's a right way of doing that too, right? There's a loving, kind way, okay? I wanted to go there. But let's read about how David does this. All right, so Saul, give you some context. We're not going to read it all. 1 Samuel 17 is where the whole story is found. The king at the time, Saul, offered a reward, and some of the soldiers were talking about it. And David had come into the camp. His father had sent him, carrying some food and some like resources, I guess, for the soldiers. And so David's hearing about this reward and about this giant, and he sees the giant. And we're going to start here at verse 26. After hearing about that reward and then seeing the giant, David asked the soldiers standing nearby, "What will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending his defiance of Israel? Who is this pagan Philistine anyway, that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living God?" And these men gave David the same reply. They said, "Yes, there is a reward for killing him." And notice this, but when David's brother, now get this, maybe context here helps. I don't know if you know this, David was probably in that range of age. We don't know for sure, but like 13 to 16. He's not an old guy. He's not even fully grown or matured. And he's asking these questions. His older brother says something to him. But when David's oldest brother, Eliab, heard David talking to the men, he was angry. "What are you doing around here anyway?" he demanded. Pipsqueak, right? Throw some words in there. "What about those few sheep you're supposed to be taking care of? I know about your pride and deceit. You just want to see the battle." Judging the motive of David's heart, you're just here for sport. You're just trying to rile some people up. And David responds back. And this is where the edge comes out. "What have I done now?" David replied. "I was only asking a question." And I love this part, because he already asked the question and got the answer after hearing other people talk about it. They were talking about, yeah, there's a reward. So David confirms, "Is there a reward?" "Yeah, there's a reward." He goes and asks again. He walked over to some others and asked them the same thing and received the same answer. Then David's question was reported to King Saul, and the king sent for him. Eliab was like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm just asking a question." He already had his answer, but you know what he did again? He goes and asked it again. As if to say, "Yeah, I'm asking the question. Yeah, somebody needs to hear me ask this question." And it was that attitude, I think, and that repeated question that got the attention of Saul to say, "We might have something here, guys. We got somebody who's maybe got the edge we need," which is a crazy thing Saul did, by the way, too, putting this little kid up in front of the giant. Let's acknowledge that. That probably carried some faith. He wasn't a warrior yet. He had been tending sheep, taking care of the flock. But do you see this edge coming out of David? It's okay to have that. And notice that it's that very edge that gets him noticed, I think, with King Saul. I almost don't have to make this next point, but I'm going to make it. Winning takes discipline. Winning takes discipline. David, before he ever made it to this fight, he was pasturing the sheep, right? He was shepherding them. He was protecting them. He was functioning as a shepherd. And there was plenty of opportunity, I'm sure, in David's life to make excuses for why maybe a lion or a bear could take a sheep. Well, I'm just a kid. I'm just tending sheep, my father's sheep. My brothers, who are all older, they've gone off to war. It's okay if one of those bears or lions takes a sheep. What am I going to do to stop them? Where are the places in your life that you're letting that stuff happen? Oh, it's okay today. If I do the thing I said I wasn't going to do, or don't do the thing that I said I was going to do. It's okay today. I'm tired. I'm fatigued. Oh, that's my thing right now, right? Well, I can be lazy today. I don't have to be disciplined today. Every day matters. Every day is training, whether or not we want to acknowledge it. Every day God has a purpose for you. It's a funny thing. I love this idea. I've been thinking about this. My wife does this, and I might ask her to let me do it a few times, but there's something to make in your bed every day. They do it in the armed forces. There's something to it. What is it? What does it matter? But it's like a big part of their routine is that they make their bed every day. There's something about it. It sets the day up right. It sets it up and it says, this is slightly inconvenient, but we're not going to make today about bending to inconveniences. We're going to make today about doing what we know to be best for us and for our family and for our life. It's a disciplined thing. It's an everyday thing. See, nobody talks, I've talked a lot about being defiant in our hope, right? Having hope, trusting that God's going to come through for you. I've kind of been taking a step back on discipline, but this is here. It's in David's life. We got to talk about it. Discipline matters. It matters. And I'm not saying you can't make mistakes and then bounce back the next day. That's part of it too. That's being disciplined. But let's read why it matters. 1 Samuel 17:34. King Saul is asking David about what's going on. David's making a case to King Saul on why he's ready to take down the giant. But David said to Saul, verse 34, but David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. That's crazy. That's crazy. It's just a sheep, David. It's just one. We're not saving a country here. We're not delivering a people. It's just one. Let him go. If he lets him go, he doesn't have anything to fall back on to say, I'm ready. He doesn't tackle that challenge that day. And who knows how hard that day was for him. It might have been a terrible day. We don't know. We don't know the quality of that day. We don't know what excuses he had to not do it. But if he lets it go that day, is he ready for Goliath tomorrow? No. No. Don't let it go. Winning takes discipline. Also note something. This is interesting. Your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. What David did here, this is interesting, to the bear and the lion, a little bit different than what he's going to do to Goliath. Striking them, grabbing by the beard, taking the lamb out of their mouth. That's like close quarters sort of combat, right? At least that's what I'm reading in this. Is there is at least some close quarters combat happening between David and these fierce animals. But David, perhaps being a musician, had an element of creativity to his faith. We talked about this last week. Faith is not empty of imagination. In fact, faith is full of imagination. You see this with Abraham. You see this right now with David. He's trusting in the might of his God. And he's also not limiting the means by which God can work through him. Saul says, okay, go for it, David. You can go ahead and fight the guy, which is crazy. It's something. And he goes, here you go, David. Here's my armor, right? We've got armor and a sword and all this stuff. And David puts it on and wears it. And he's like, this doesn't fit right. This isn't me. This isn't what I'm going to do here. I'm not used to this. I've never done this before. This isn't who I am. I'm a shepherd. And so he takes off the armor, which is crazy. He's fighting a guy, right, standing up there, who's huge. He's like 9 feet tall, and he's got a massive spear, huge. He's strong. He's a seasoned war veteran. He's not just big. He's skilled, and he's got the machinery to make life incredibly difficult for David, who's coming at him with a little shepherd's staff. But what David does is interesting. It's unique. You don't really see this anywhere else in Scripture. It's the only time I've seen someone do this in a fight. He goes to a brook, little stream, and he finds 5 smooth stones. And when the battle comes, him and Goliath jaw a little bit. They got a little back and forth going. David's not afraid. He's telling him that. Goliath's laughing at him because he's so little, so small. There's a lot of trash talk. Yeah, a lot of it. They're jawing. They're going at it. And he comes sprinting out at Goliath with a sling. And you got to be thinking, Goliath's probably seen it all. If David runs out there with a bow, even something long distance or a javelin or a spear, something to kind of throw at him, you probably got to think Goliath's going to have his shield raised up to stop that. If he comes at Goliath with a sword and attacks him normally, Goliath's got a longer reach than him, he's stronger, he's probably going to just bat him away and slice his head off. But what he comes at him with is probably something Goliath has never seen before. He comes at him with something new, something different, something that takes a dreamer to come up with. You've got challenges in your life that are maybe too big for you, and maybe the answer is not typical. We have to be open in our imaginations to see what God has given us and our skill sets and our abilities and even our weaknesses and say, how can God work through this? A great weakness of David, if you want to look at it, is that he's not used to wearing the armor of a typical warrior. That's a weakness. Did God use it? Yeah. Oh yeah, he did. It takes creativity. Winning takes creativity. I'm going to go with, I was hesitant to kind of share this because I don't really know all the details on this. I was just inspired by it. This past Friday, we went to, so the Radcliffe Center. I'll give you a little background. I grew up in Garden City, and we would always drive by and even play basketball in the Garden City Junior High. I don't know if you know where that is. It's like got that dome that you might see it from the street. It's kind of near Ford Road. Anyway, I'd go play basketball there, a lot of sports there. And behind the Garden City Junior High was this place called the Radcliffe Center. And when I was growing up, it was like an offshoot of Schoolcraft College, basically, another campus for Schoolcraft. Well, anyway, the Radcliffe Center was, I think, sold back to the city by Schoolcraft College. They didn't need the building anymore. And they did a massive renovation of this building. Huge. We've got a picture of it on screen. You can't even see all the stuff. And they opened it up Friday, and it was like a grand opening of it. And so we took our kids. We went with Steve and Bev, Jana's parents. We went up there and we checked it out. And I was stunned. Because I'm not used to seeing this. Truthfully, I'm not trying to put down Garden City. I'm not used to seeing this level of quality in Garden. It was like next level. Like I might expect to see this in like Northville or Plymouth or Bloomfield Hills. Like you might, but this was like right where I live, and I'm going, man, they had everything that you could think of for a community center. They've got workout rooms, senior fitness centers. They've got an incredible arcade, not just like average, incredible. A brand new game room with all sorts of brand new stuff for kids to interact with. They've got a movie theater. They've got a card table room that's like high quality stuff. Everything in there was high quality, and I could see that there was a dreamer behind the scenes who was thinking about something. And in the back of their mind, I could almost see the thought process. Here it is. It's the kids in our neighborhood, the youth, they don't have anything to do. They got nothing to do. Their parents are out working, they're grinding, and the kids, they don't got anything to do after school. No wonder kids are getting in trouble. They got nothing to do. There's no place to go. There's nothing to do. What are we going to do for those kids? And our seniors, they're content in their homes, but we want to get them out in the community again. We want to get them even maybe in the same space as some of these kids. We want to get some mentorship, some organic maybe mentorship opportunities happening between the youth and some of the older people in our community. Let's make a space for them. And I see the dreamer kind of coming out into this and putting things in place, one thing after the other after the other. And it inspired my heart, and I said, man, it's like multi-million dollars. I haven't seen anything like this in the Metro Detroit area. This is completely new. I've never seen anything, not to this extent. And I'm seeing it, I'm going, they let a dreamer loose. They let somebody who had some creative vision, and they let them go wild and said, go for it. And I think what the community is going to end up seeing is this actually does resolve some of the challenges that they've been seeing. And it might seem small to maybe if you don't live here or whatever, but I think to kids in that neighborhood, it's going to be huge for them. Because where are they going to go? They're not going to be out egging people's houses if they can go to this awesome space. Seniors might not stay inside if they know that they've got a community center they can go to and meet up with other people. And, it's really cool. So I saw that and I thought that's a good creative solution to probably a bigger issue. And I've been thinking even in our church, this is kind of in the development stage, but we're going to do it. I'm excited about this. I've been meeting with Kevin and Valita and some others. We've been talking outreach, and I want to give just a preview of what we've been talking so that you know. Our culture is one where we're disciplined and we're defiantly hopeful, and so when we do outreach, I've been in my heart being like, let's target people groups who need that. You need discipline, and you also need a defiant hope. And so as we've been talking, the special needs community just is like flashing bright green lights like, hey, that's for them. Parents of special needs children need both of those things. They need an uncommon sort of self-discipline to help their children regulate and be productive members of society. And they also need a defiant hope when they encounter strange things that other parents maybe don't have to deal with. And so we're going to be doing some really cool stuff. We've got a craft night that we're going to be hosting here. It's coming, right? Like I said, still in development, but I'm too excited to not share it. And so part of that is we're going to be formatting a couple of the rooms here to be spaces that kids who have maybe some can get a little bit overloaded sensory-wise can go and stay in those rooms to help them settle down. And we're going to have a cart that has a lot of the things that the kids like that need. They need like stimming stuff, things that helps them kind of regulate and self-regulate. And we're going to reach a community here. And in talking to Kevin and Valita, I was like, okay, what do we got to do to meet these people where they at? Like, what do we got to market? What's the cost? And they're just like, if you set it up and you put it on social media, there'll probably be too many people. We won't be able to manage all the people that want to come to this. That we won't be able to. And I was like, okay, so like how many people do we need? And they were like, well, parents will typically come and they'll assist, but if they have more than one, we'll need helpers. But really, I mean, it's going to be something where they're coming and they just want community with other people who are like that. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And then from there, probably going to set up some small groups for them where we can have people kind of ministering to each other because there's not a whole lot of that for that community. There's not a ton of it because, it's just a different challenge they have to work with their kids. And so I'm just like really, really excited about this because I think we've got an opportunity to give people something they're not going to get anywhere else. They're going to get a defiant sort of hopefulness that they need to push through the difficult challenges that they're facing. So I just wanted to share that we're dreaming over here. We're dreaming about what God wants to do in our community, and we're going to make some really meaningful impacts. I want to close up service today. Yeah, I'll tell one more story before we close. I got to do one more story. I feel like God's kind of pushing me. There was giants look different for different people. There's a guy named Quintez Stiggers who plays football in the United States of America. Quintez Stiggers. He a few years back, he was playing high school football, very talented cornerback, and this was right before COVID happened. His dad passed away. And his dad was his biggest fan, biggest support, helped him train, was all in on this kid's athletic endeavors. And he was talented, like, D1 college, talented. And so his freshman year of college, that year before his dad passes away, and he's just depressed. And he's got nothing for it. Nothing for football. One of the things he said is, my biggest fan's not here anymore. Why would I play? His dad was gone. And his mom, I think, had a little bit of an edge to her. And she, of course, is dealing with her own grief, her own suffering, but she sees her son, and she sees his giftedness, and sees underneath that pain and depression and sadness because of what he's gone through, sees that there's still something in him for this sport. And so she basically is inspiring him and saying, hey, you don't have to play football right now, but stay training, get ready, stay training, encouraging him to stay disciplined. And so he continues to train, but he doesn't go on and play. His first year of college, COVID hits on top of that, so like all of the rules and everything are weird with football, and it's like, and so it's just kind of a depressing time for people of that age group, on top of the fact that his dad is no longer there. And so he takes a year off football, and his mom is praying for him. His mom is encouraging him. He's still training. And she finds this interesting, strange 7-on-7 football league. And it's this weird league where there's like some players who used to maybe play in some of the professional leagues, like, you know, Canadian football, NFL, and they'd go there and play in the 7-on-7 league, and she goes, why don't you go try out for that? This weird, creative stuff that love sometimes produces for those you love. And he goes and he's just doing what his mom is telling him. And he goes and he plays. And scouts start seeing this kid, and they're like, he's got some incredible athletic ability. This guy's got some talent. And he catches the eye of someone in the CFL scouting, Canadian Football League. And they bring him over for a tryout, and he's still kind of wrestling with some of this stuff with his dad. This isn't gone. But his mom keeps pushing him because she saw something in him. She was unwilling to give up, and she was willing to be creative enough to say, why don't you go try this? And so he goes and he plays in the CFL, and he ends up being the CFL Rookie of the Year a couple years ago. And this year, after all of that, he's healing, he's mending from his father's death. He gets scouts from the NFL coming to come see him play. They're watching his tape and they're saying, this guy's got potential to be an NFL athlete. And this year, this draft that happened in April, the past couple months, he gets drafted in the 5th round by the New York Jets. And he's going to be playing in the NFL this year. All because I really think a mom wouldn't give up on him. A mom saw in him great potential. And he, for his credit, was willing to stay disciplined in the middle of a terrible situation. Even when life was really brutally difficult and he was covered in depression, a mountain probably the size of Goliath of depression and difficulty. He stuck with it. We stick with it through the stuff. We don't give up on Scripture. We don't give up on Jesus. We don't give up on each other. That's not who we are. We fight through it because there's a reward coming for those who win. Don't give up. Don't give up hope. Be defiantly hopeful. So today, we're nearing the end of our service here, but I just felt in my heart that there's people, and you know who you are, where you're facing a giant that's too big for you. That's too big for you. You know it. You might have even been being crushed by it, pressed into submission by it, hurt by it, losing because of it over and over again. There may be a giant who stood before you and blocked your way for years. We're going to have leaders up here. Ty's just going to play in the background. We're going to have leaders. I invite the leaders to come up. If you're a leader who's going to pray for people, come on up. Leaders are going to pray for you. Come on up. Don't hesitate. Come on up for prayer. Ty's going to play. And what I'm going to say is, we're kind of closing in here on the end of time. I don't want to overburden any of our workers in children's or nursery. So please, this is going to be kind of a soft dismissal where Ty's going to be playing in the background. But if it's you and you need prayer, don't leave. Come get prayer. And to anybody else it's time to go, it's time, and you just know you don't necessarily need this, please feel free. We're going to dismiss on that note. So I'm just going to pray, and then I'll dismiss, and Ty's going to play. And if you need prayer, come on up. Jesus, thank you so much for being a delivering God. Being a God who takes the heads of our enemies, even the giants. God, we need your help. We lean back into you even more fully than before. We press more fully than before. We don't give an excuse for why we can't. We give you our suffering and our pain, and we worship for you for why you can. You can, God. We open it up to you. We offer it up to you. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We hope you leave here closer to the Lord and encouraged in your faith. If you would like to support our ministry, you can go to themergecc.com and click on the donate button at the bottom of the screen. Thank you and God bless.